All right, I just want to start out saying I think Brian and his staff did an excellent job assembling a really good draft class that we're really excited about and looking forward to working with these guys in 2 weeks.
All right, we'll go ahead and get started. Rob Domofsky.
Hey, Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great, Rob. How are you?
Oh, just wonderful. You've meshed as well as anyone has with Aaron since you've been here.
Yeah.
What has he told you that he wants?
Listen, Rob, I really appreciate the question. I'd like to keep every conversation that Aaron and I have had up to this point between us. And, you know, I know the reports out there. I mean, this guy is our quarterback, man, and he's our leader of our team. And I want nothing more than to see him back in a Packer uniform. And, you know, we've been able to accomplish a lot of great feats over the last 2 years, 2 straight NFC championship games. I know the seasons haven't ended the way we've wanted them to, but in my eyes, he's the greatest to ever do it. I don't care about Super Bowls or whatnot, but we want him back here.
That's all well and good, Matt, but what if he doesn't want to be back here?
Yeah, I know, and I can't even take my brain to that spot right now. So I just want to do everything in my power to ensure that doesn't happen.
Bill Huber.
Hey, Matt, hope you're having a good offseason. You've talked a lot about, and I realize this is a COVID quote, but we're all in the sucker together, and obviously chemistry is such a big deal. When you sit back, do you wonder what the hell's going on with your chemistry with all this other stuff going on? Does that worry you that this thing that you've worked so hard to build over your 2 years is crumbling, blowing up potentially?
Yeah, like I said, I mean, there's been a lot of work over 2 years from everybody involved in this thing, from the personnel department to the coaching staff to all the support staff around our building to our players. And certainly when you feel like you have a great team on the cusp, and we've been on the cusp 2 years, and I know that's not what we want. We want to hoist that Lombardi Trophy, and certainly you don't want to take any steps backwards. And we know that every year is going to be presented with new challenges, and like I told our team in our opening meeting, we're not hiding from anybody. We're going to have a big bullseye on our back, and so we've got to embrace that and work each and every day to keep improving. And so, yeah, certainly I don't want to take any steps backwards, and we'll just keep focusing on what we can control, and that's to be the best version of ourselves.
Chancellor Johnson.
Hey, Matt, over the course of the season, Rodgers had hinted at some of the uncertainty of his future. But for you, how much of a sense did you get that we could get here to this point at the offseason?
Yeah, I've never really thought about that. I mean, I can't fathom not being in Green Bay. So that's where my mind's at. I just, I don't only love the player, but I love the person. I love working with him on a daily basis. I think we all do, from the players in that locker room to the coaching staff. And I don't even want to let my mind go there.
Ross Uglum.
Hey, Coach. Amari Rodgers, does he have a, kind of fill into that Tyler Ervin, Tavon Austin role, or do you guys feel like there's maybe more of an expansive package for him?
Yeah, I think he's proved that throughout the course of his career at Clemson. I mean, I think he's a legitimate receiver, whether we use him on the outside or in the slot. He's got returnability. He could potentially be a dual returner for us. So I think he's a complete football player.
Steve McGargy.
Talked about your goals. With what y'all have added this week with hanging on to Aaron Jones. I know it's a humongous if, but if you do have the same quarterback this coming season that you had last season, how capable do you think this group is to kind of take that next step and get past the NFC Championship game?
Yeah, like I just talked about, Steve, every year's got new challenges, and there's different variables, and you got to try to recreate that magic, and that doesn't happen without the hard work and just putting everything you have into this thing. So we're going to have to get our minds right and attack each day to be our best, and that's the message to our team.
Tom Silverstein.
Hey, Matt. Is there really a role? I know you have a great relationship with Aaron, and you've worked with him for 2 years, but is there really a role for you in this? Isn't this more of a business kind of a situation? Do you really feel like you can make a difference in whatever, changing his mind?
Well, we're all in this thing together. In terms of everybody in this organization is on board. We all want him back as our quarterback. There's no doubt about it. He's like I said earlier. I believe he's the greatest of all time. And so, anytime you have a guy of that caliber, of course, not only as the player but as the person and as the leader in that locker room, of course, you want him leading your team.
Mike Spofford.
Hey, Matt, getting back to Amari Rodgers for a second. When we talked to Brian last night, he described just how bound and determined he was to get him and make that trade up for him. I'm wondering did you know he was that interested in that player? Did you have an interest in or how strong was your interest in adding him to your offense and your special teams?
Yeah, I just mentioned his versatility, and that is huge in this offense. The ability to, on first and second down, to go outside. He's got a good build to him. The expectation is on the rundowns to be able to dig out, whether it's safeties, corners, to be able to be a premier blocker. And then when he gets the ball in his hands, he's pretty dynamic. And I think you can use him a lot of different ways. Whether it's on jet motions or in the passing games. I think he's a really good route runner. So, he's just a complete football player. He's got great play strength, and he's proved it over the course of his career at Clemson.
Andy Herman.
Matt, I lost track of how many times last year you told us best 5 linemen out on the field. You stayed true to that philosophy and had success. How important is it that these 3 offensive linemen also have that same level of versatility?
Well, I think that's a big reason why we had so much success last year, and I credit Adam Stenovich, Luke Butkus for their ability to get our guys, in the right positions, and then the players themselves. So certainly anytime you add talent like we did over the last 3 days, that versatility is vital to our success as an offense and as a football team.
Ryan Wood.
Hey, Matt, I completely respect you don't want to share details of your conversation with Aaron, but in general, have those conversations led you to be in any way hopeful or optimistic that he will, or that there's room there for him to come back, that he's open to the idea?
Well, I'll always remain hopeful and optimistic, and certainly we'll always welcome him back with open arms. He knows exactly how not only myself but our staff and our players feel about him, and like I said before, I just can't imagine him not being in a Green Bay Packer uniform.
Chris Roth.
Hey, Matt, I'm not trying to be clever here, but you, as a head coach, you say you can't imagine it, you don't want your brain to go there, but you have to get your brain to the point, if he isn't here, how do you get somebody else, right now you only have one, ready to play if necessary? How does that change what you do and what's going on right now with Jordan?
Well, in the game of football, I think any time that you're with every position, but specifically the quarterback position, when you're the next man, you're preparing like the starter. And so that's the mentality we take. It is a next man up mentality, and we know, regardless of who's out there on the field, like the standards and expectations, they don't change. So we're going to prepare every player in our program like they're the starter.
Can you give us a sense of where Jordan is compared to maybe where he was at the end of the season and what you've seen from him so far?
Well, that's really tough to tell because, he hasn't been back here. So,
right.
I know he's working his tail off to come back in the best possible shape and the best possible player he can be. I know he's given everything he's got into the workouts and into our virtual meetings, and he's doing a great job, and he's learning a lot. But the reality of the situation, he's a young quarterback, and he's a young quarterback that wasn't provided an off season really last year. There was no preseason games, so it's really limited exposure. And not only that, all last season, Tim Boyle was our backup, so he didn't get a lot of the reps in practice. So, I think we're all interested to see where he's at. We're excited about him. I think he is a talented player, but we all know that with any young player, specifically at that position, there's always going to be room to grow.
Thanks, Matt.
Mark Daniels.
Hey, Matt, mentioned you can't wait to get these guys in a couple of weeks. What are the plans for these guys? Are you going to have some in-person stuff? Is it going to be virtual? How are you going to handle it?
Well, just the protocols in place. All our meetings will be virtual, but we will have some time to get these guys on the grass and kind of give them a little bit of exposure as far as what exactly we're going to do. We're kind of working through that right now, but we will have a good plan for them when they get here, and just really excited to get to not only put these guys through drills or whatever it may be, but really ultimately get to know these guys as people.
Aaron Nagler.
Coach, kind of piggybacking off of that, how disappointing is it as a coach? You come through the season dealing with COVID, all the restrictions, daily testing, you get on the back end of it, and okay, here's some light at the end of the tunnel. Now you're back into your off-season program, but it's got to be virtual. It's got to be disappointing as a coach who wants to get guys, maybe not on the field right away, but at least in the building.
Yeah, there's nothing like that daily interaction with our players. I mean, that is something that I think motivates all of us to, make those connections and develop those relationships. And, it's huge in the locker room. Developing that camaraderie, that team chemistry, I think it's so vital. I think they're the teams that become the closest have the best chance at potentially, being the best versions of themselves. So, we're really looking forward to getting these guys, hopefully here later in the offseason in a couple weeks back in Green Bay.
Wes Hodkowitz.
Hey, Matt, I know obviously the draft is a business and you guys wouldn't have taken Cole Van Landen if, he wasn't a pretty good football player, but was that kind of a neat experience being able to be a part of that phone call for, a guy that, grew up 10 minutes away from the stadium here and obviously has some big ties to Wisconsin?
Yeah, absolutely. Anytime you get a homegrown guy, obviously I didn't ask him this, but I'm assuming he grew up a Packer fan. I sure as heck hope so. To be able to play for a team that you probably grew up idolizing, I think that's a pretty special moment. And I know the last kid that came from Bayport is doing pretty good in this league, and Alec Ingold, so you can't pass on that twice.
Mike Clemens.
Matt, I wanted to ask you about your off-season program here, so I'll ask you this. When did this situation with Aaron begin? Was it before you started your meetings, the 19th of this month, or was it after the final game of the season when you had your exit interviews? When did he voice this?
Yeah, Mike, I appreciate, the question. I just, like I said, I'm not going to get into details of any of that. All I'll say, again, we want him back here, and, he knows how we feel about him.
Jason Wilde.
Hey, Matt, I'm sure you know my reputation for being a sucker for drama, so you'll be very disappointed when I don't ask a dramatic question about Rodgers here. Instead, I'm going to ask a dramatic question about OTAs. I know you're excited to get on the field. Are you hopeful, nervous, confident about having all of your guys, for not Rodgers related, but with all the talk about guys not coming, where do you kind of think you are, and how important is it to get that work, especially after not having it a year ago?
Well, I mean, the off-season program is completely voluntary. So certainly we'd love to have all our guys back here just, again, to develop that team chemistry that I think is so vital, and to help develop their skills and making sure that we're ready to go when training camp rolls around. But, that's up to every individual, whether or not they want to be here. But if it's up to me, I sure as heck hope they come back.
Matt Schneidman.
I think we have set a record for most questions without asking about your first-round pick. What do you think you have in Eric? I know you guys re-signed Kevin, but what role do you think Eric can fill this year?
Well, time will tell. It's all about competition in this league, and certainly we think he's a very talented player that has obviously great speed, great coverage skills, great length. But it's a competitive situation. And I talked to Kevin yesterday, and he realizes that. Jair realizes that. And our goal as a coaching staff is always to get the best 11 out on the field. And so the more competition you have at every position, I think that brings out the best in each individual player, which obviously helps this football team.
Tim Van Boren.
Evening, Matt. In the past, you've obviously expressed great positivity about your relationship with Aaron Rodgers. You've expressed great positivity about your relationship for the guys you work with in the front office. As the coach in this Rodgers situation, how challenging is this spot for you personally?
I just focus on the things I can control, and that is to just make sure that we're all communicating. And I think that I think when you have good people that communicate with one another, that you can work through tough times. And that's what I'm most hopeful about.
Tom Silverstein.
Matt, is it fair to assume that Jordan Love has been the lone guy in the quarterback room? You don't really have anybody else, right?
Not at the moment, Tom, but we have two on the roster. We have Aaron and Jordan, and I'm certain that we will add another in that room. You never want to go to camp or off-season program with less than 3 quarterbacks, so we'll be busy in that department. And sometimes you carry 4, so that's certainly something that I think Brian and I will be in communication about in terms of who we're going to add to that room.
Yeah, my question was, so if Jordan's the only quarterback, do you have to go at a different pace than you normally would in terms of the things new things you want to add, and all the things that you're changing from a year ago as you install things?
Well, every year you present new wrinkles, especially when you have an offense like as prolific as we had this last year. There's a good chance that a lot of teams are out there studying you, so you'll add new wrinkles. But I think you teach and you present the concepts of what you think is best for this football team, and until you get these guys here and see what they can do, things change, and it's ever evolving.
Ryan Wood.
There's a lot of pressure being a young quarterback, even without all this going on. How do you insulate Jordan from all this drama with what's happening?
Well, I've talked to Jordan, and I told him, there's a lot of noise out there. You can't focus on that. You got to focus on yourself and just trying to, again, I know you guys think it's cliche, but he's got to be the best version of him, and he's got to do everything in his power to make sure he knows the expectations, the standards which we've developed at that position. And, I know he's working hard.
We'll do 2 more. Ross Uglum.
Coach, you mentioned when you were conducting your defensive coordinator search that you had a clear vision for the defense. You also said you didn't want to give away the answers to the test. What is that clear vision? And at the same time, how much input did Joe have on, your defensive acquisitions as kind of how he wants to play defense as opposed to what you guys did in the past?
Yeah, there was great communication, and I think Joe has a great vision. He does a great job of articulating that vision, and we think we got some players that can potentially help us. But all these draft picks within every team, no matter where you're drafted, everything's an unknown at this point, and everybody feels good about their draft class. But the bottom line is, guys got to come in and they've got to prove it.
And last one, Bill Huber.
Yeah, I know you've been asked about Amari a couple times, and this would be a silly question considering you're number one in the league in scoring last year. But how much did it limit you to not have that slot guy? Tyler gave you some jet sweep stuff, but when he was gone, that kind of went out the window.
Yeah, we try to recreate that with some of the other guys. The one thing that I do think that we have is we've got a pretty versatile group already. It's always easier when you have a legitimate number one receiver in Devontae Adams. But I think all those other guys, MVS, Allen, EQ, they all complement each other really well. And I think our coaching staff does an excellent job of putting them in position to make plays and really showcase what they do well. And, really excited about that group as a whole.